Oh, we're live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Monday here at Gymnast Mindset. I am Sherry Medini, and this is Marcello. He is on tonight because the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight is how your brain is like your smartphone, and Marcello is the one that introduced me to this concept. He is heavily involved in the wrestling mindset side of things. So a little bit of background on that as well as Gymnast Mindset. So if you are new here, Gymnast Mindset is a gymnastics specific mindset training program for individuals and teams to help with things like confidence or relaxing under pressure, mental toughness, all of that good stuff. But we also have a, brother company in wrestling mindset where we, the core of it's the same, that there's a really extensive program of worksheets and systematic training that goes into it. And then what we've been able to do is make it sport specific, because that's the other key piece to this, that, not only is the core and the fundamentals of this accurate and helpful and great in and of itself, but when you apply it to your sport specifically, I know some about wrestling, but not nearly as much as someone who's done it their entire life. And same applies. He knows what he's looking at when he watches gymnastics, but it's not the same thing as someone who, grew up doing it and has spent their entire life, in the sport. So that being said, the similarities that we have, wrestling and gymnastics are definitely heavily mental. I think you would agree that there's a huge component to that.
I'm biased over which one I think is more mental. That's okay.
We'll always be biased. But remember, we're here on Gymnast Mindset Facebook.
Okay.
So for the purpose of tonight, do you agree that Gymnast is more mental? I don't think he'll ever agree to that.
No, I'm not going to agree to that. That's crazy. No.
I don't think he's ever...
you could. It's probably equal because you have a different dynamic. So if we talk about both sports and really what we do, so between wrestling mindset or gymnast mindset or some of the other sports that we also help out with, at the end of the day, we're helping athletes compete at their best, obviously whenever it means the most. And gymnastics is a little bit different because, like, gymnastics, you start off at a 10 and you work your way down. Wrestling, you can find yourself in a hole.
Depending on what scoring system
you do. Wrestling, you can find yourself in a hole and you kind of dig your way back, and plus you have someone that's actually on the other side and someone that's actually, wrestling you at the same time. Whereas gymnastics, a lot of that is, more so on fighting the perfectionism. A lot of it, you have different challenges, and that's why we've kind of separated in terms of some of the things we do for the gymnasts versus what we actually do for wrestlers.
And wrestlers want to talk about wrestling.
Right.
And gymnasts want to talk about gymnastics, which is
right.
fun. I love getting to, hop on the phone calls with my gymnasts and talk shop and talk about what they're doing and understand what they're going through too. It's kind of a different thing. So all of that being said, the topic that we're going to talk about tonight does kind of apply regardless of sport. And I think same kind of thing. There's going to be variations here or there, but it's an interesting concept, and it's one that I don't think we hear often enough in terms of kind of needing to conserve that brain energy, needing to treat your brain like a battery that you need to recharge and take care of and not overuse, because we kind of just take it for granted. We take for granted that our brain's going to be there for us and communicate with our body and perform at its highest capacity, and that's just not the case. If it's tired, it's not going to function the way we need it to.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want me to kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so again, if we talk about really how the brain's wired and really like what it wants to do. So first off, the brain itself, again, it's just like a computer, and you've probably heard that before. About 20% of the total calories in your body throughout the day actually are consumed by the brain, right? So that's why like habits, that's why all those things are really important, because again, it's just the brain's way of actually conserving energy, right? So it's the same reason why, like, if again, you think about willpower or anything like that, like when people are on their diets early in the morning or the beginning of any diet, it's very easy to follow through and actually do those things because you have the energy. But again,
once you get to 9 o'clock at night,
at night and then you're tired, then it's harder to make those eating decisions. So again, we talk to wrestlers, we kind of relate that to weight cutting. 9 o'clock at night is when most wrestlers think like, oh, I'll probably float like 4 pounds tonight, or I can probably have that. It only weighs half a pound. It's kind of the same thing.
Or, a lot of times in gymnastics, you guys are training, practices go till 9 or 9:30 tonight. and you need your brain to last all the way through. If you're throwing big skills all the way up till 9:30 tonight, you need to make sure that you're conserving energy throughout the day, brain energy throughout the day, and refueling that, recharging that, so that you can make it to the end and have every practice, be purposeful, be meaningful, keep you working towards something important.
Exactly, and gymnasts struggle with this, wrestlers struggle with this, a lot of different athletes struggle with this. You talk about like having like that actual peak state, and gymnasts all the time want to be like ready and like want to be like always like at that peak state. Wrestlers, obviously, it's the same way, but again, you can only hold a state for a certain period of time, and again, if you try to do that long term, that just actually drains energy. So what happens with wrestlers and probably happens with gymnasts, it's on those competitions when you're not performing how you normally do, it's a feeling, it's terrible. It's like you know exactly what you should be doing, but for some reason you're just not able to do it. And a lot of that has to do with actually how the brain's wired. And I can go into what happens and how that tires it and tires everything out, and kind of circle back in terms of the actual cell phone analogy.
Sure. So, but what I want to bring up there is that I have, talking with these gymnasts that it's difficult when they say like sometimes you just can't go for a skill, that it's like I've done this skill over and over and I just hit a wall. And I've talked to girls that explain it as like, I don't know, I just went blank, I just blacked out, I didn't know how I did it anymore. Like it was like you just lost everything, and that's so frustrating in that moment to know that I had this skill, I did 20 of them. Why can't I just do one more or 5 more or whatever it is that you need to do? Why can't I finish this assignment? And it's so frustrating to be stuck in that position and not know what to do about it. And that's where this is often such a relief, that if we can offer an explanation, if we can offer a process, if we can work with you to help you get to the point where you're not going to feel so out of control or so lost or so helpless, that's the goal of it. We can get into that a little bit more, but back to kind of the smartphone analogy, I mean, if I'm, or you, or whoever, we're on Instagram all day, or we're taking pictures, or we're texting people back and forth, your battery's not going to make it through the day, typically.
Good. Well, the big analogy I give is that if you have the GPS running in the background, you don't even notice it. It's just killing the battery quicker, and eventually the phone hits a certain point where it starts shutting things down, and eventually it's going to shut everything down.
Right. So, it goes into low power mode, and then it dies.
Exactly.
Low power mode, everything's not working as best as it could, but when it dies, like, there's nothing, it goes black. There's nothing there.
Right.
You can't do anything until you charge it back, or until you plug it back in. But I think the other piece of that is the more that you're using it, the faster it dies. That if your iPhone's just kind of sitting there, you're not looking at it, I don't know, does that ever happen? But if there happens to be a day where you're not looking at your phone, it's going to stay charged a lot longer. You're not using it as much. And the same thing does apply to the brain. So, it's not... just like smartphones have a limited amount of capacity, our brains have a limited amount of capacity. So we can recharge, they can function day after day. You don't have to replace them all the time, but we do need to recharge them. So kind of those two, I guess we can talk a little bit about the problem with running on low battery, which I think we touched on a little bit. But I also wanted to touch on the two pieces of it to prevent this from happening, that on a regular basis, we can work on staying calmer and kind of conserving that energy. And we can also be very purposeful about how you're recharging and when you're recharging. Absolutely. And both of those need to work in tandem. It's not one or the other necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the same cell phone thing. I mean, mentally, it's not like we're just collapsing most of the time. Like, that doesn't happen for most athletes. What happens is you do that mental ping pong.
It might feel like you collapsed.
It might feel
like everything just gave out, and all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. I was fine a second ago, but in reality, it's slowly draining.
You might have had something running in the background that you don't know, or again, you might have gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and again,
let's touch on that a little bit, because I don't think we realize that we do that as often as we do it. So one of the things is we fight ourselves a lot. We have this mental ping pong going on in our head where, maybe you're at school, and I did another Facebook Live about this, where like, if you're at school, Don't spend your energy wasting, like worrying about practice later or what's going to happen. You have no control over that in the moment. And same thing, if you're at practice, don't be worrying about the test you have tomorrow or whatever drama happened at school. Like that, leave that there. You can't do anything about it in the moment. And while it may seem harmless, it is taking brain energy.
Yeah.
It's draining that battery. But the other piece of it is that fight with yourself, that our instinct is to be like, catch yourself. You're thinking negatively and you try to snap yourself out of it. And you try to quickly go the other direction and kind of pump yourself up instead. And being negative and being too amped up both drain the battery a lot faster.
Yeah, so if you're...
It's like watching YouTube.
Yeah, if you're like really...
on your smartphone.
Yeah.
Or watching a Facebook Live or watching Netflix. Like, it drains your battery faster.
Yeah, if you're anxious and you just try to basically, pump up the, like the music, just get yourself like more, are you just burning through that nervous energy faster? So one of the things, and then one of the first things I do in terms of talking to athletes on the wrestling side, and again, in terms of some of the other sports is, first off, like that actual psychology and actual physiology in terms of like what happens, and again, like it's not like there's anything wrong with you, because that's the biggest thing. First, to realize like there's not like there's anything wrong with you. This is literally how you're wired.
And there's nothing better about someone else who's managing it better. I think a lot of times we look at it and they say, well, they must just have this magic superpower. Like it's in their DNA that they can be calm and relaxed and be able to function better.
No.
And the reality is that probably not wired any differently. They've just figured out how to manage it along the way.
Yeah, they might have stumbled upon doing some of the actual right things. So, I mean, do you want to go into what that process looks like to fix it, or no?
Well, let's talk about these two pieces at least.
Okay.
So, I feel like approaching this issue. So, the issue of staying calm throughout the day, like we talked about a little bit, staying in that present moment, trying to keep your thoughts calm, trying to stay focused on where you're at, trying to make the most of your time where you're at, try not to fight yourself back and forth. Do you have any advice as far as that goes? Staying calm on a more regular basis.
Sure, and this is something, we go through in terms of wrestling mindset. I'm sure it's the same thing for gymnast mindset.
Yeah.
The biggest there's a lot of biggest mistakes. I'm going to say a lot of hyperbole
One of the
here.
mistakes.
One of the mistakes people make is, again, you think like, I'm confident or I'm not confident, or you like, I'm ready or I'm not ready.
Right,
and
that
realistically,
black or white thinking.
everything is on a sliding scale, and like you want that feeling to go away, and that feeling might never go away. So maybe nerves are at like on a scale from 1 to 10 are at like a 7, and I need to get to a 3 because a 3 is manageable. And you're at a 7, you want to get to 0, and that might not even be possible. Again, in terms of
right, or you feel like I'm at it needs to be off or on, and being able to say like, you know what, I'm here and I can gradually work every step. I can go in the calm direction is an improvement. A 6 is better than a 7 instead of being all or nothing in that thinking.
Exactly. And again, we're always working toward the actual improvement too. And again, some matches or some competitions, you're gonna be at a different level, and being okay with that, knowing like there's a point where like, let's say like nerves, or let's say just like maybe the confidence isn't exactly where I want it to be, but I can increase that, and then same thing for like the nerves. Maybe the nerves are higher up than what I normally would want it to be, but that's okay. That's something that I can manage. So that's one of the first things that kind of calms you down too, because it's not knowing like, look, it's not black or white. It doesn't have to be nerves are at a 7 and then they're at a 0, because again, I made that mistake before. I thought like, all right, well, I'm either confident or I'm not confident. I'm nervous or I'm just relaxed, whatever. And again, it's going to be a good practice. It's going to be a bad practice. You absolutely have degrees to that. You actually have degrees to that. So that's one thing. Just knowing too, like, again, it's not like there's anything wrong with you. Like it's literally how you're wired. And once you figure out,
just not making it such a big deal.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to figure it out. We've already done that for you.
Yeah. The other piece of it that I do want to talk about a little bit as well is making sure we take that time to recharge. Making sure you take that time to plug back in and get some rest and relaxation. And it's important that what that looks like is going to vary from person to person. That what might feel restful and, revive you and get you to a better, calmer spot might not be the same thing that works for me. And oftentimes in that
different. Some people might need to be built up. Some people might need to be pushed back down. If they're very high energy, they might need to learn how to calm down. And likewise, if people are naturally a little bit less energy, you might need to learn actually how to like pump themselves up. But again, in both those situations, the best point to do that is when you're calm and when you get yourself to neutral. Because again, when you're all over the place, it just it doesn't work as well as what you want it to. So again, calm is definitely the best place where you can pivot and put yourself in terms of the right place mentally. If you're bouncing all over the place, again, it's just like, having a phone just keep switching apps. Like, again, it's not going to be productive.
Yeah, and I think a big piece of this, we do a lot with self-knowledge through the program because it is so important to understand what works best for you and where you're at and, how we can improve this. But the other piece of it is, I hear a lot of times we work with a lot of high-level athletes that they do have crazy schedules, that they're in high-level classes at school. There's a lot of homework attributed to that and studying that goes along with that, and they're headed to practices and maybe extra practices. And, I understand that there's a lot on your plate. And the important thing to remember, again, it's not all or nothing. We're not saying you need a whole day to recharge your brain or you need like a whole week of just pure relaxation. That's not what this is about. This is the day-to-day. With my girls, I'll say, take a step back. Tell me what your daily schedule looks like, and I kind of hear like, okay, well, you have a study hall that take 5 minutes. What's going to really recharge you in that moment before you dive into homework? Or, on the way to practice, what can you do to unplug, unwind, turn off your brain before you head into practice? I've given as an example before that in carpool trips we would play card games with each other. And it was, I know, somehow we were okay. I get really car sick now, but I was okay. But we played card games because it was something that like had enough of your attention that you could tune out. You weren't thinking about practice. You weren't thinking about school. You were thinking about winning your hand at whatever we happened to be playing.
Exactly.
And it was restorative in that sense. So it doesn't mean that you need a ton of time, but it is important to squeeze in those kind of things. And I think so often we get stuck in those and we're losing those 5-minute chunks throughout the day where you might have 5 minutes, but instead you scroll through Twitter and get yourself angry about something, or you stalk your ex-boyfriend on Instagram and like feel bad about things.
That's definitely a gymnast
in 5
problem.
minutes. You're telling me wrestlers don't stalk their ex-girlfriends?
No.
So, instead of taking that time to be restorative, you're not helping yourself in that regard. And it is important to take those moments to be able to function the whole way through a day because you are asking a lot from your brain. I mean, you're asking your brain to communicate with your body, to do double backs and Yurchenkos and blind changes and, Tkachevs and whatever else. You're asking a lot of your brain and your body. And when your brain starts to go into low power mode, it's saying, we don't want to throw these high stakes things. We're not wanting to function at that level right now. So making sure that it doesn't get to that point. And I think you made a lot of good points that it's not all or nothing, that it's important to keep in mind that the stakes aren't always as high as they feel, and that there's always a way to at least improve a little bit.
Exactly, and again, in terms of like being able to relax, that's the hardest thing for elite level athletes because I feel like they always need to be doing something that's kind of progressing things. Again, if we talk about peak performance and all that good stuff.
Right, and really trying to drive home the point that relaxing or deep breathing or taking that time,
all that
is progressing, is helping you move forward, is helping your performance.
That's helping you set the stage so you can be intense and be ready to go when you actually need to. But again, in terms of that physiology and that psychology, like habits are really, really important. Again, getting all these things in place and kind of doing that's why like so many gymnasts, so many wrestlers have certain things that they kind of always do, or like they kind of have like all these like typical
and initially
routines.
That's what we work with our gymnasts a lot on, and wrestlers as well, that we initially it has to be very purposeful, that we set up these routines and we really plan them out. And I don't want you to just figure it out the day of,
right.
The day of the meet, like, okay, what's your plan for tomorrow? You have a meet tomorrow. What's the plan for tomorrow? And if they're like, I don't know, I probably need to like find my warm-ups and maybe wash them, and I don't know who I'm riding with or when we're leaving. I'm like, figure it out. Figure it out so you don't have to waste any energy tomorrow, any mental energy that I'm waking up at this time, I'm going to eat this for breakfast, I'm going to, there's calm in that. And once that can really become a routine, then that's helping you all along the way get closer and closer to focus mode.
And you're not like switching like throughout the day too. Like when you're in one task or one thing, you're kind of staying on that. So again, in terms of that like analogy, like when a computer switch tasks, when your phone switch tasks, and you go from one thing to the next, there's like a split second when like everything kind of shuts down. That's why and that's why like multitasking is actually counterproductive, because again, like you actually have some like dead spots. So it's kind of the same thing too. Like mentally, when you go through all that, you're giving yourself a lot more dead spots. It's not as conducive in terms of doing what you need to do. So again, for any trial session or for any like intro call, we always talk about that. We talk about the actual physiology and the actual like psychology in terms of like how your brain's wired and like what's going on and like what happens in these matches or these competitions, quads, what do you call it? Meets. In these meets, dual meet, quad meet, whatever, when you're not wrestling or you're not competing gymnastics as you normally should, is because of that, just tiring yourself out. And those are the times when you know what you should be doing but you're not able to do it. And that is because your brain literally defaulted to battery safe mode, or literally shut everything down. So that's when like you see someone who's had a complete breakdown mentally, they're completely worn out, and that's just it just completely wiped them out. And then there's other ones where maybe it's a bunch of like small things where like you should really stick it, and you're like, oh well, I can kind of take that step, whatever, you need to catch better.
Still that spectrum again. It also doesn't mean just because you're not failing horribly or not falling 5 times on beam or, whatever, there is that same spectrum, that there's always room for improvement in there, that you can always work on this, that there's no such thing like, well, I'm probably fine. Like, it's probably good enough.
What did we
and
watch?
It's like
Alabama, Georgia, was it? What was the special?
Oh, about the coaches?
Yeah.
We were watching, Alabama and Georgia about the,
that one, it was
Suzanne
like
and Sarah,
1/1000th of a point or something like that.
Right. Oftentimes it does come down,
It's
especially in college gymnastics, it comes down to such a small margin. So, I do think this is something that in the gym, outside of the gym, and that's what we really try to do, is that wraparound approach, that whether it's life or school or gymnastics, these are things that are going to be helpful to you now, in the future. We've been there. We, have gone through those ups and downs, and we didn't have these kind of tools. And kind of looking back on it, it's always like, well, that would have been good. Would have been good to know. That would have been helpful. Would have made our lives a little bit easier. But even now, being able to kind of apply these types of things and at least understand that it's a problem. And I think that's kind of step one, is it acknowledging that might be what's going on. If you're struggling with stuff like this, if you're struggling with, blanking out and struggling, making those silly mistakes and wondering why, this might be one of those factors. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think I think you did a pretty good job. So the only thing I'll say, if you have a sibling and girls can wrestle too,
that's true.
You can head over to wrestlingmindset.com, sign up for a free session. Chances are you're going to talk to me.
Yeah.
Or, again, if you're looking to kind of improve, you're looking to kind of, relax under pressure, you're looking to kind of take your gymnastics to the next level, or just looking to really build a solid foundation so that when you do get more serious, you don't have some of these stumbling blocks that kind of people have like deeply ingrained, head over to
Gymnast Mindset. So what I always tell you too, if you're struggling with this, or, if a teammate or, you're a parent and a friend's kid is struggling with this, please share these kind of videos with them. We are always happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can visit our website, gymnastmindset.com. We have more resources there as well. Like Marcella said, we do offer a free trial session if you want to jump on the phone and, kind of get a feel for what's going on. We get to hear more from you. We get to hear more from the gymnast and understand what might be going on there, and hopefully give them 1 or 2 takeaways that they can start using right away. But other than that, we hope that you have a great rest of your week. I
If you
appreciate
look
you
back, I think
tuning
you did
in.
a previous one where you explained like what actually happens in a trial session, right? You have a
Yep.
different
So
live stream. Yeah, so check out some
gymnastmindset.com,
of the previous
if you go
videos.
to and click, get a free trial session, or get a free session, I have a video there explaining what a trial session is. And like I said, feel free to reach out. You can message us here, you can email, whatever. We're happy to answer any questions. But other than that, thank you guys for watching, and tune in next time. We'll be back next Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will talk to you then. Bye.
Later.